Yeah, so digital identity, there is so much potential here, right? If you look around the world at how many people don't have any kind of formal identity, and what is your first entry point to formal systems, right? Whether it's credit systems, often medical systems. So having identity and provable identity is a really powerful thing, right? So there's a lot of advantages to creating a digital identity system. There's also challenges, right? As I talked about at the beginning, the whole reason that Rockefeller Foundation had kind of reached out and wanted to fund this work at the beginning was because they were excited about digital identity, but also wanted to make sure that you could do it in a way that really privacy and privacy is preserved, right? And especially when you start to talk about children's identity, I think this is really important. I think that blockchain has a lot of potential in this space, right? I think the ethics are really, really important, right? Thinking about who has identity, right? In a lot of situations, we don't really give people identity until they're a legal adult, which can be, different ages in different places. But understanding kind of who has identity, that goes back to the governance as well, right? How do you decide who's got identity? I know we've talked a lot in the past about kind of digital identity for marginalized populations, right? Think about homeless populations. There have been some pilot studies around the US in terms of, can you provide a digital identity and incentive, kind of token incentive system for homeless populations. But when you start to look at the service providers that you could connect those homeless populations with, some service providers, that are government based, does identity start at 18? What do you do with folks who are, maybe homeless teenagers, right? That are refusing to go into shelters and things, how do you link them up with services, right? How do you create the governance around who gets that identity? So, I think there's a lot of exciting potential, and there's just a lot of need here, particularly for getting the diverse voices into the picture.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
Jane, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo the sentiment that there's a lot of potential, and I do believe actually that providing digital identity at birth can help with a lot of issues. For instance, now the pandemic has also highlighted, right, what happens if children don't even exist. How can you make sure they get the healthcare they need or the education they need, or are not subject to many other abuses, right? So I do believe that actually even earlier at birth, making sure that we provide digital identity can help with financial inclusion, bridging the educational divide, and many other things we deeply care about at the global level. But Jane, go ahead. I know you have some very...
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit to it, because I think technologically it's possible to create a secure identity for anyone, whether at birth or at any age, and to, hash it up onto the blockchain while preserving privacy. That can be done, is being done, has been done all over the place. I think the issue is, and to some extent Kara introduced it, is who is going to recognise and accept that identity, and for what can it be used? Because we tend to sort of think of identity as a passport or a driver's licence or something like that, but they're actually not. They're certifications by government, saying that you are a citizen of the United States or whatever it is that you are. And so I think the big issue is who can issue and who will recognise it, because the same thing came up in a discussion that I was having about identity in humanitarian settings, and they used digital identity in humanitarian settings, and the Red Cross is creating attestations around those digital identities to say that this person, can pay back their debts, or this person has this skill, but they're not useful anywhere outside of a refugee camp. So I think that the visionary challenge that I would have is how to be able to create that identity linked to a biometric secured somewhere, that can be durable for the lifetime of a person, and that you can add information like, can they drive a car safely, or you can add information about their credit scoring and so forth. But I think the issue that we have is that in every country, the way that identities are issued and who's allowed to issue them and so forth is very, very different. And then the other side of it, Ingrid, and I think you implied it there, is that once you have it, it can become a tool for bad actors or for, you know, regimes to be able to target people that they might not like. And so there's kind of two sides to that coin about the benefits of an identity with the risks of having an identity that people are able to access and find you.
And
Absolutely.
Ingrid, if I can jump in really quick
Please.
again, you know, I think that, you know, Jen brings up so many of the complex issues around this, right? One, that it's what these identities are going to be used for, what that entire human governance layer is outside, you know, what's that entire human ecosystem that these identities are going to be used for, right? The idea of having durable identities, which is very powerful and has a lot of positive benefits, but there's also many, many reasons why somebody changes their identity in their lifetime, right? Think about people who have been victims of violence, you know, who are kind of political refugees, right? I mean, there's many, many reasons to change your identity. And as we start to put things in an, you know, in an immutable, effectively immutable system, right? Especially linking biometrics, there's a lot of ethical challenges, right? That you have to think through very carefully about doing it in ways that are beneficial, but you're also mitigating the negative impacts, right? Because we often, you know, technologists don't usually create technology for bad purposes. They create it for good purposes. But then one of two things happen, right? You can get unintended consequences, or you can get other people who are maliciously, you know, manipulating the system to their benefit, right? And you have to be able to build robust and resilient systems, in this case, identity systems, that will be able to prevent the negative impacts from both of those avenues. And that is a challenge, right? We don't have a single answer to that. And that's why it also becomes very contextual for how you're using these systems.
Absolutely. And we had a great session last year on cyber ethics. And I think that's the major challenge that we face across the board with everything we talked today. All the opportunities we have in deploying blockchain, it always boils down to what we are facing with unintended consequences, right? Even if we try to do the right thing otherwise. So I think we're at the end of our session today, but I'm sure our audience enjoyed it. And as always, we want to thank everybody for watching. Also check out our social media channels for the blogs and articles that we might publish in conjunction with the recording of this session. And thank you so much, Kara, for making space. And thanks again, Jane, for doing this together. We really appreciate everybody joining us. Thank you.
Thank you too, Ingrid. And thanks, Kara.
Thank you very much. This was a pleasure.